think it's going to get crazy in Ferguson. I think there's going to be a lot of violence there, and it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty.
And that cop probably didn't have to move out of that neighborhood, right?
Yeah, I think they want to reinstate him or going to put him back on. I don't think so. I think he's got to take off. I don't think he's going to be welcome in that town, and for his own safety and that of him and his family and everyone, I think he's probably going to have to move on. But I would be shocked if he gets indicted here on anything. I think really it's over.
Final thing, Jody Arias, they're trying to wrap up the sentence. First, I want to ask you, do you think Juan Martinez should have retried this because there were 4 holdouts last time? There wasn't just one, as Dwayne Cates pointed out. There were 4. What do you think? Should he have retried this or just left it?
I'm not a fan of Juan Martinez. I'm not a fan of his. I think he's a little wacko, and I think he's a bully in the courtroom there. And but look, he got the job done. He got the conviction, and that's what he had to do. So here, does he really want to put this woman to death? I guess he does. I guess that's all he cares about right now. I think they could have made a resolution in the case. They could have basically had her in solitary for the rest of her life, have her waive all of her appellate rights. Because you know how much it's going to cost the state when she starts taking appeals on all this stuff? I mean, millions of dollars.
Oh, forget about it, right?
And they could have just, said, you know what? You're going to be locked up for the rest of your life. You're not going to see the light of day. You're not going to see people. You're not going to communicate with anyone. You're just going to sit there with you and yourself, and you can mull it over in your brain what happened that night. I think that would have been the resolution. But, at the end of the day, and one thing I will do, give praise to Juan Martinez, the way he walked through the events and the stabbing and the way he slowly walked through it with Travis looking in the mirror and having her stabbing him and him trying to get away from her and she going off on him, medieval on him with that knife. I mean, that really resonated. And so I guess, it's not the issue. Are you for the death penalty or not for the death penalty? It's the death penalty is in that state and it's legal. And if there was ever a death penalty case, I guess this is probably it. So, look, with 4 holdouts, it's a close call. A lot of prosecutors would have just cut bait and made a deal that was a successful deal, and they would have moved on. But this is personal. I mean, this is not just a district attorney prosecuting a case. He's taking this very personal, and he wants her. He wants her dead. Yeah.
Yep. Getting his autographs outside.
Exactly.
Never seen that one before.
I think he's waiting.
Right,
I think he's waiting for his invite to be on your show. But I hope you're not going to give it to him. But he's waiting.
Okay. Thanks for giving me a good show, Richard. I appreciate it.
Anytime, my friend.
We'll see you on Saturday at about 12 noon on CNN. Right?
You got it. Thanks so much.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Given here with IGN News. Both Netflix and NBC have canceled comedy projects with Bill Cosby as he faces continuing sexual assault allegations. The comedian was set to make his return to the small screen with the network that made him a star in a new family comedy. NBC has elected to drop the project in light of recent events. The former Cosby Show star was also working on an original comedy special for Netflix, which has also been delayed indefinitely. A Netflix spokesperson said in a statement, "At this time, we are postponing the launch of the new stand-up comedy special, Bill Cosby 77. The special, which was taped on the actor's 77th birthday in July, was set to launch on Netflix on November 28th. Allegations against Cosby have surfaced over the last several months. Among them, music publicist and journalist Joan Tarshis wrote an essay in Hollywood Elsewhere, which she claims that Cosby drugged and raped her when she was 19 years old on 2 separate occasions. Barbara Bowman wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post, alleging that Cosby drugged and raped her in the late 1980s. Former supermodel Janice Dixon came forward in a recent Entertainment Tonight interview, alleging that Cosby raped her in 1982. Cosby had already settled a sexual assault suit in 2006 out of court. Court documents reveal that attorneys had planned to bring forward 13 additional women. Cosby and his representatives have repeatedly denied the allegations. We'll keep you updated as details emerge.
I came to Cleveland last night. I woke up this morning, Skip Bayless. It was 1 degree. I don't want to hear any complaints from Bristol about cold weather today. I don't want to hear it.
Poor thing. Your jet set lifestyle is cold there.
This is the reason I will never forgive LeBron for leaving South Beach. This is what I'm talking about.
I just saw you on ESPN last night at halftime of one of the games, didn't I? How did you get to Cleveland last night? Did you walk?
I took a car service 5 hours from Indy to Cleveland.
Oh, it's a tough life,
guys.
Yeah, it's a tough life, huh? It's 1 degree.
I'm here. I'm ready, but it's cold. Right. It's cold.
Stephen A. Smith is in Cleveland, where LeBron and the Spurs play tonight. We will discuss that a little later on in our show. But let's talk about the other things that will be on the show today. We missed you yesterday for 24 hours of college basketball. We will discuss the freshman phenom Jahlil Okafor coming up a little later on in the show. But first, let's get right to it. On Tuesday, the NFL notified Vikings running back Adrian Peterson that he's been suspended for the rest of the 2014 season, and his return to the league will not be considered before April 15th of 2015. The league is suspending Peterson for violating its personal conduct policy after he pleaded no contest earlier this month to reckless assault of his 4-year-old son. The NFL Players Association says it plans to appeal the suspension. The arbiter in Peterson's grievance hearing has ruled in favor of the NFL, saying the league can keep Peterson on the commissioner's exempt list, which effectively ends any chance that Peterson will play again this season. But he will be paid while he's on that list. But according to Peterson's attorney, he should have been reinstated immediately after his legal issues were resolved. Let's listen.
I'm just speechless because in this country we usually don't have punishment being made up as it goes along. And then for Goodell's statement to be so hypocritically self-righteous about Adrian not showing sufficient remorse, who in the hell does he think he is?
The citizens of Texas, in a grand jury proceeding, after hearing all the testimony and seeing the evidence, chose to indict Mr. Peterson for a felony count of abusing a child. Mr. Peterson entered a plea, and the judge in Texas, not Roger Goodell, the judge in Texas, found that there was, in his words, substantial evidence to support Mr. Peterson's guilt. And Mr. Peterson, not Roger Goodell, Mr. Peterson signed a paper acknowledging, quote, I am criminally responsible. And it was fully appropriate for the NFL to impose some discipline pursuant to the process that was collectively bargained.
Okay, and Roger Goodell, in a letter, explained this. He says, the punishment, the injury inflicted on your son includes emotional and physical trauma to a young child who suffers criminal physical abuse at the hands of his father. Again, that was part of Roger Goodell's letter into why he decided to issue that punishment. Stephen A. Smith, we discussed this on the show, and we're not discussing how you should discipline a child, but we are talking about Roger Goodell, the discipline in which he handed down to Adrian Peterson. What do your reaction to the suspension?
Well, I think it was excessive. I completely agree with Adrian Peterson's attorney, Mr. Rusty Hardin, particularly when he said to Roger Goodell, who the hell do you think you are? I stand by those kind of assertions. I stand by those kind of questions in a manner in which it was vehemently expressed by Mr. Hardin, because I think it was appropriate in this particular situation. We all understand that Adrian Peterson is no martyr. We all understand that he was incredibly wrong and egregious. We also understand that again, when we saw those marks in that child, we all considered it abuse. We talked about it on this show ad nauseum. That, to me, is a separate issue in this respect. Obviously, he went on the commissioner's list. He was being paid at the time, of course, but he wasn't allowed to play football. Well, now that the decision has been made and the plea deal was reached or what have you, I personally would not have had any problem whatsoever with Commissioner Roger Goodell confiscating the remaining $4.1 million of Adrian Peterson's salary or fining him $5 million or what have you. But the games missed are the games missed. And that, obviously, to me, should be enough. The fact that this is extended to an entire season, to me, it reeks of a PR move on the part of the NFL, who know that they performed a dereliction of duty for so many years as it pertained to a bevy of issues affecting its league and their willingness to address it. Had they addressed these things and these kind of stipulations or what have you had been on the books already, then I would be more sympathetic. If this was something that Roger Goodell handed down in the aftermath of instituting a new disciplinary policy as it pertained to domestic violence and other things, child abuse in this particular case, and then something like this had happened, I would have no problem with it. But the fact that these kind of things were not being addressed by the NFL for so long, and then public sentiment swelled to such astronomical proportions that the NFL had no choice but to get off its back, figuratively speaking, get up and address these issues with the diligence it deserved in the first place. One would argue a lot of these problems would have been alleviated quite a long time ago. Again, we're not trying to absolve Adrian Peterson from anything. The man was wrong. What I saw in terms of those marks on that child was definitely abuse. But he's missed his share of games, and if you find him $4 to $5 million, considering all that has already transpired, I think that would have been incredibly sufficient. The fact that the NFL decided to add to it by suspending him for the year, or keeping him off the field, rather, for the year, I think just reeks of a PR move trying to appease a bunch of folks out there. I think it's disingenuous. I think it's hypocritical. I think it's excessive. And ultimately, I think it's wrong, period.
I hear everything you just said. And obviously, I also think Adrian Peterson was very wrong. He took it way, way too far. So let's start from that premise. Now, were you surprised at all at Roger Goodell's reaction and ruling yesterday? Were you surprised by it?
Some of the things I just a little bit skipped from. It came across a very. It was a paternal. It was almost, the letter was paternalistic, to say the least.
It was like a lecture.
Yeah, it was like a lecture, and it really rubbed me the wrong way.
Okay.
Proper care of your kids.
Okay.
Whoa,
all right.
whoa.
Fine. It was completely and utterly predictable, coming from a commissioner who I think we would have agreed has been under extreme fire to the point that his job has been on the line. I agree with Rusty Hardin that now Adrian Peterson is being made a scapegoat because of Roger Goodell's past failings, we all know all too well, when it comes to domestic violence. But Stephen A. Smith, help me out here. If the commissioner is under fire, his credibility has been called into question and is being, as we speak, investigated. Wouldn't you predict that he would drop the hammer as hard as he is allowed to drop it? And by the way, let's go back to this. Last collective bargaining, the players in the 11th hour conceded absolute authority when it comes to discipline to Roger Goodell. So he still has the ability to drop the hammer, and he dropped it as hard as he could drop it, short of a lifetime ban for Adrian Peterson. Why did he do that? Because he knew full well going in that the NFLPA will now challenge. They will appeal. And if they win some right to get a specific number of games that Adrian Peterson will be docked, game checks and games, then it will be their fault. The NFL just doesn't, Roger Goodell can't appear to be at fault at all here. He can't appear to concede at all, to be at all lenient when it comes to the punishment of an Adrian Peterson who we all agree whipped his child with a switch beyond what is reasonable for any parent to whip their child. So to me, he's now putting it in the hand. This is an image game, and he has now placed the penalty in the hands of the NFL Players Association. So now they will appeal, and if they win some concession here, that he will be suspended for whatever it is, I don't know what it is, 9, 10 games, and he will lose 6 game checks. Well, then Roger Goodell can say, I tried to punish him as harshly as I could punish him. America, did you see what I just did? Is it scapegoating? Sure it is. But it was a predictable play on the part of the commissioner.
Well, just because it was predictable doesn't make it right.
It doesn't make it right.
It doesn't make it right. It was predictable, and I agree with you there. That can't be refuted. But that doesn't make it right. More importantly than anything else, Skip, it sort of lets Roger Goodell, to some degree, off the hook because of his mishandling. You've got a lot of people. You got to remember, Skip, I was of the mindset that Roger Goodell does not need to go, and I stand by that assertion. Well, yeah. I'm not thinking that just because I disagree with his decision here that suddenly he's a subpar subpar commissioner that doesn't deserve his job. But I'm here to tell you, it comes across as if I'm in the minority, because there's a lot of people that don't believe that Roger Goodell should have remained as commissioner when his ruling in the Ray Rice matter, initial 2-game suspension was handed down, and then all of a sudden a bevy of facts continued to come out, and then you question what Roger Goodell knew and didn't know. So obviously there are people that still have their reticence, their apprehension about Roger Goodell, and I can respect that too. My issue is that here you are. You could simply move forward and say, in light of all of this news, in light of all of the stuff that is going on in our league that has sullied our brand or what have you, from this day moving forward, we are going to bring a heavy hammer down. And I think everybody would have known that, and that would have been fine. But to sit there and, in my mind, essentially retroactively go about the business of trying to cover your own behind and do the kind of things that he's done in terms of engaging in this level of hypocrisy with this ruling against Adrian Peterson, and somehow, some way, is that supposed to absolve Roger Goodell? How come we can't go back then and look at Roger Goodell and the dereliction of duty that he's performed as commissioner of the NFL and say, you know what, why haven't you been punished? Why haven't you been fined? Why haven't you been suspended? Why haven't you had some of your pay docked as commissioner? Because you did some things wrong. Now, you didn't do anything egregious like abusing your child or engaging in domestic violence. That should always be made. We should always make sure that we highlight that, which I have done repeatedly as it pertains to Roger Goodell.